The rooftop terrace shimmered under the Manhattan skyline, a sea of laughter, jazz, and crystal glasses catching the last blush of sunset. Waiters in black vests floated through the air like shadows, refilling champagne flutes and balancing trays of canapés worth more than a week's rent downtown. Emily Carter stood near the edge, her hand resting on her rounded belly, smiling softly at the glittering city below. 7 months pregnant, she looked fragile but radiant in a pale silk dress that shimmered under the fairy lights. Her husband, Marcus Hale, the millionaire host of the night, moved among his guests like a king inspecting his court. Every nod, every handshake was deliberate. He wore his success like armor, tailored suit, Rolex glinting, that easy charm that could convince anyone he was the perfect man. To everyone watching, he was. To Emily, he was a stranger she no longer recognized. The jazz band paused. Marcus raised his glass. "To loyalty," he said, voice smooth as aged whiskey. "To beauty, to power, and to the women who make us believe in both." The crowd laughed. 2 women, tall, sleek, and perfectly groomed, stepped closer to Marcus. Sienna Brooks, a model known for her emerald eyes, and Ava Larkin, his PR director with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Emily had seen them around before, always too close, too confident. But tonight, there was something different, a glint in Marcus's eyes, a cruelty hiding behind that perfect smile. Sienna whispered something into Marcus's ear. He laughed, a little too loud, and nodded. Then, as if rehearsed, Ava reached for a bottle of red wine resting on a white linen table. The label read, Chateau Margaux, 1996, a bottle worth more than Emily's entire monthly allowance. She held it like a weapon disguised as luxury. Emily frowned, confused. "Marcus?" She called softly. The crowd turned. Marcus smirked. "Relax, honey, it's just a joke." Before she could step back, Sienna and Ava tilted the bottle. The deep crimson liquid cascaded over Emily's hair, her face, her dress. It soaked the silk, splattered her shoes, and ran down onto the marble floor in rivulets of red. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. Another whispered, "Oh my God." Marcus didn't move. He just watched, smiling faintly, hands tucked in his pockets. Cameras flashed. Phones recorded. In seconds, the laughter turned into murmurs. Emily stood frozen, wine dripping from her eyelashes, her hands instinctively covering her belly. The taste of bitterness and humiliation mixed in her mouth. Her heartbeat thundered, louder than the music that tried to restart. Sienna laughed, brushing a drop of wine from Emily's cheek. "Oops, guess I missed the glass." Ava smirked. "Maybe red suits you, sweetheart." The crowd hesitated. No one dared to intervene. Marcus's power filled the air like static. He raised his glass again and said lightly, "To cleansing old mistakes." Emily's breath broke. Tears blurred her vision. The room swayed. Light, sound, everything spinning. She could feel her baby move, startled by the shock coursing through her body. The humiliation cut deeper than the cold wine soaking her skin. No one came to her side. Not one of those smiling guests moved. Her trembling fingers reached for her phone. A contact name flickered on the screen. Luca. She hadn't called her brother in years, not since he'd left New York, for reasons no one discussed openly. But tonight, she had no one else. She pressed the call button. It rang once. Then a voice, deep and steady, answered. "Em, what's wrong?" Her lips quivered, her voice breaking. "Marcus, he let them." The line went silent for a beat. Then calm but deadly. "Stay where you are. Don't move." Far below, the hum of the city dimmed, and somewhere in that Manhattan night, a storm began to move toward the rooftop. The elevator doors closed with a soft chime, sealing Emily inside a mirrored box that smelled faintly of wine and steel. The noise from the rooftop faded, replaced by the steady hum of descent. Her reflection stared back. Mascara streaked, hair clinging to her cheeks, her once white silk dress ruined by dark red stains. The color looked too much like blood. She pressed her hand against her belly, whispering, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's okay." But her voice shook, and the lie echoed in the empty space. The elevator jolted slightly, then continued its smooth fall. A drop of wine ran from her forehead down to her lips. She wiped it away with the back of her hand and exhaled shakily. The phone in her palm buzzed, Luca's name lighting the screen again. She answered instantly. "Emily, talk to me. Where are you?" His voice was low, clipped, dangerous. "The rooftop at Park Avenue Tower," she whispered. He let them pour wine on me, in front of everyone." A long silence stretched through the line. She heard him inhale, slow and sharp, Go somewhere safe, not home, not the penthouse, I'll find you. I don't have my purse, no cash, no cards, she said, trembling. Just my phone. I'll handle it. Do not go back there. The line cut off. The elevator doors opened into the marble lobby of the building. Guests in evening wear drifted past, still laughing from the party above, unaware or pretending not to see her. A concierge looked up, startled by the sight. A pregnant woman drenched in red, heels in one hand, fear in her eyes. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked carefully. She nodded, though her lips quivered. I need to sit down." He offered her a towel, retrieved from a guest's Ritz-Carlton bag left at the desk earlier that evening. She took it gratefully, dabbing her face, the cloth turning pink. Then he offered to call security or an ambulance. She shook her head again, whispering, "Please, no attention." Her voice was small, almost childlike. Outside, the night air hit her like cold glass. The city lights blurred through her tears. A black Mercedes S-Class idled at the curb, Marcus's driver Tom waiting as instructed. He stepped out immediately, eyes widening when he saw her. "Mrs. Hale, what happened?" She hesitated. "Just drive me, anywhere but home." He frowned, torn between orders and instinct. "Mr. Hale told me." "I'm not asking you, Tom, please." He studied her for a second, then nodded. "There's a hospital 15 minutes away, Mount Sinai East. You don't look good, ma'am." Her hand went to her belly again. The baby hadn't moved in a few minutes. Panic crawled up her throat. "Yes," she whispered. "Take me there, please." They drove in silence through the city, the skyline flickering past like broken memories. At a red light, she glanced out the window. The reflection of her stained face looked like someone else entirely. She thought of the laughter, the phones raised, Marcus watching without a hint of shame. The humiliation replayed in her mind, every smirk, every whisper. She could still feel the wine dripping down her back, cold and sticky. For the first time, she didn't cry. The tears had frozen somewhere deep inside. Tom spoke quietly as they approached the hospital. "You're not the first woman he's hurt, you know, but maybe you'll be the one who stops him." Emily turned her head, startled. "What did you say?" He didn't answer, just parked near the emergency entrance, then stepped out to open her door. "Go. I'll wait here if you need me." She nodded, stepping onto the pavement, clutching her belly with one hand and her phone with the other. Inside the sliding glass doors, the sterile brightness swallowed her whole. A nurse gasped when she saw the stains, rushing forward with a wheelchair. "Sweetheart, what happened?" Emily's voice cracked. "I just need to make sure my baby's okay." As the doors closed behind her, the world outside seemed to pause, unaware that someone dangerous was already on his way to make Marcus Hale pay. The emergency room lights were blinding, sterile and humming with quiet chaos. Nurses moved fast but gently, speaking in calm tones that contradicted the urgency in their eyes. Emily sat on the hospital bed, shivering beneath a thin blanket. The dried wine on her dress had turned almost black, its smell sharp and bitter. A fetal monitor beeped steadily beside her, the rhythm of her unborn child's heartbeat. Strong, defiant, alive. She clutched that sound like a lifeline. Dr. Grace Nguyen entered the room, clipboard in hand, eyes warm but alert. Her dark hair was tied neatly, her tone soft but direct. "Emily Carter, right? 7 months along. I'm Dr. Nguyen. You're safe here." Emily nodded weakly. "Is the baby okay?" Grace smiled faintly, checking the monitor. "Yes, heart rate's normal. You've got a strong little fighter in there. But your blood pressure's high, and your stress hormones are through the roof. What happened to you tonight?" Emily hesitated, the question heavier than she expected. Her throat burned as if the truth itself might cut her. "My husband, Marcus Hale, he let 2 women pour wine on me. At a party, in front of everyone." Grace's pen froze midair. "He what?" Everyone saw. Cameras were out. He didn't stop it, he just watched. Grace's eyes softened with empathy but stayed professional. "Okay, you need to rest. The baby's fine, but your body's in shock. We'll monitor you overnight." As Grace adjusted the IV line, a hospital social worker entered, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a clipboard full of forms. "Mrs. Hale, I'm required to ask, would you like to make a statement about what happened? It could help if you ever need." Emily cut her off, shaking her head. "No, my husband funds this hospital's new maternity wing. If this gets out, it'll be my word against his. I can't." The social worker hesitated, then nodded gently. "If you change your mind, we'll help. For now, Let's focus on your health." When she left, Grace lingered. She pulled her phone discreetly from her pocket, snapped a photo of the wine-stained dress and labeled it medical documentation. She didn't say a word, but her eyes said everything. She believed Emily. For a few quiet minutes, only the beeping monitor and distant announcements filled the room. Emily stared at the ceiling, her thoughts spiraling. Images replayed in her mind, the crowd's faces, the sound of laughter, the flash of phones. Shame crawled under her skin, hot and suffocating. She touched her belly again, whispering, "I'm so sorry you had to feel that." Grace returned with a warm blanket. "Try to sleep. You need it." Emily nodded, but sleep felt impossible. She picked up her phone from the bedside table. Several missed calls from private number, Marcus, and one unread message. "Come home. Don't embarrass me further." Her thumb hovered over the delete icon. Instead, she opened her contacts. Luca still glowed at the top, his call from earlier unanswered since the chaos. She typed, "I'm at Mount Sinai East. The baby's okay." Seconds later, her phone buzzed. His reply came short and sharp, "I'm already in Manhattan." Emily's pulse quickened. She didn't know whether to feel relief or fear. Luca hadn't set foot in New York in years, not since the night their family name whispered alongside words like Mafia and favor owed. But Luca always kept one promise. No one hurts his sister, and walks away. She exhaled shakily, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. Outside the window, the city glowed indifferent. Glass towers, blinking lights, endless motion. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably still smiling, still pretending nothing had happened. She imagined him raising another toast, unaware of what was already coming for him. And as the monitor beeped softly beside her, Emily closed her eyes, unaware that the storm she had set in motion was already on its way to Manhattan's doorstep. The sun hadn't risen yet when the sound of heavy boots echoed down the sterile hospital hallway. Nurses looked up briefly, whispering to each other as a tall man in a leather jacket moved with quiet purpose. Luca Romano didn't look like he belonged in a place of healing. His presence felt out of place among the white coats and gentle voices. But to Emily, lying awake in that dim hospital room, he was the only person who still felt like home. The door opened without a knock. Emily turned her head, and for a moment, time stopped. He hadn't changed much. Still broad-shouldered, his beard trimmed close, eyes the same deep green that used to soften only for her. "Luca," she whispered, voice trembling, "you really came." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, crouching beside her bed. His hand brushed her hair away from her face, fingertips tracing the faint bruise on her temple where the wine bottle had grazed her. His jaw tightened. "I saw the video," he said quietly. "Everyone has. That bastard didn't even blink." Emily tried to smile but failed. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He was supposed to be different. Lucas stood, pacing to the window. The first gray hints of dawn were crawling up the skyline. "Men like Marcus don't change," he said. "They just hide who they really are until the mask cracks. And now the world's seen it." He turned back to her. "You're leaving him." Her heart thudded. "I don't know if I can. He controls everything. The penthouse, the accounts, even my car. If I leave—" "You already did," he interrupted. "I called someone. A lawyer. Daniel Price. He's clean, smart, hates men like Marcus. He'll protect you. I'll handle the rest." Emily shook her head, fear rising. "Luca, you can't get involved. I know what people say about you. I can't have—" He leaned forward, voice low but firm. "What people say doesn't matter. You're my sister. That's all that matters." For a moment, silence filled the room. The monitor beside her kept its steady rhythm, the heartbeat of the baby echoing softly. It calmed her more than his words could. Luca looked down at her stomach, his expression softening. "How's the little one?" "Strong," she said, smiling faintly, "just like his uncle." He chuckled quietly, but the sound didn't reach his eyes. "Good, because you're both gonna need that strength." Dr. Grace entered the room then, clipboard in hand. She stopped mid-step when she saw Luca. "And you are?" "Family," he said simply. His tone left no room for debate. Grace nodded slowly, glancing between them. "She's stable, but she needs rest, no stress. I'd advise against anything confrontational." Luca smirked faintly. "Doctor, I'm not here to make trouble. I'm here to make things right." After she left, Luca pulled a chair closer to the bed. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "I got you a place to stay. A friend of mine rents out a cottage in the Hamptons. Quiet, private, no cameras. You'll go there today. Daniel will meet us in the city first. We'll get your documents, your files, whatever you need. Emily hesitated. If Marcus finds out... He won't, Luca said. He's too busy saving his image. But when he realizes you're gone, he'll panic. That's when we move. She looked at him, really looked, the same brother who used to chase monsters out from under her bed. Only now he'd become the monster they should have feared. Yet sitting there in that sterile hospital light, she felt safe for the first time in months. He stood, kissed her forehead, and said, "Rest. I'll handle everything. You won't have to face him again." As he walked toward the door, his phone buzzed. A text flashed across the screen. "He's hosting another event tonight. Investors only. Want details?" Luca's eyes hardened. He typed back 2 words. "Send address." Because this time, the monster was hunting the wolf. By mid-morning, the hospital smelled of coffee and antiseptic. Emily sat up slowly, her body sore but steady, her mind sharper than it had been in weeks. Grace had cleared her for discharge, though reluctantly. "You need quiet," she'd warned. "No stress, no confrontation." But quiet didn't exist in Marcus's world. Quiet was where he hunted from. Luca arrived with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and a look that meant there'd be no debate. "We've got 2 hours before his people start sniffing around," he said. "We go in, get what matters, and get out." Emily hesitated, one hand instinctively on her belly. "I can't just vanish. There are things I need, my medical records, my design files, my—" Luca cut her off gently. "You'll have them. Daniel's arranging a temporary restraining order. You're not disappearing, Em. You're taking your life back." An hour later, the Mercedes idled outside the Fifth Avenue penthouse. The doorman, eyes wide, glanced nervously at Luca. He wasn't used to seeing Emily with anyone but Marcus, and certainly not a man who looked like trouble wrapped in leather. Still, he buzzed them in without a word. The elevator ride up felt endless. The moment the doors opened, Emily froze. The apartment was too quiet, the air heavy with the ghost of last night's laughter. She stepped onto the marble floor, each heel click echoing like a memory. The crystal glasses from the party were gone, but a faint stain remained on the rug, dark, like dried guilt. Her hand trembled as she reached for the hallway light. The penthouse was beautiful in a way that felt wrong, sterile, impersonal, curated for show. The scent of Marcus's cologne still lingered, a blend of cedar and arrogance. "Take what you need," Luca said, scanning the rooms with soldier's precision. "I'll check his office." Emily moved quickly. She packed a small suitcase, prenatal vitamins, her mother's Tiffany locket, a worn sketchbook filled with nursery designs. She opened the nightstand drawer and found her MacBook Air, the silver casing smudged with fingerprints. Inside were her design contracts and proof of her freelance income, the only leverage she had. In the living room, Luca rifled through Marcus's desk, snapping photos of bank statements and contracts with his phone. "He's transferring money into shell companies," he muttered. "Daniel will love this." Emily passed the wall of framed photographs, their wedding portrait, her smiling, him pretending. Without hesitation, she turned it face down. The sound of glass against marble was sharper than she expected. A faint sound broke the silence, the elevator chime. Luca's head snapped up. Someone's coming. Emily's heart slammed in her chest. "Marcus?" Luca motioned for silence, sliding to the side of the door. The elevator doors opened slowly. A man in a gray suit stepped out. It was not Marcus, but one of his assistants, carrying a folder and looking startled. "Mrs. Hale," he stammered. "Mr. Hale asked me to." Luca stepped forward, voice calm but edged with steel. "He doesn't need you here. Leave." The assistant's eyes darted between them, weighing fear against loyalty. Fear won. He backed into the elevator and vanished. Emily exhaled shakily. "We need to go. Now." They moved fast. She grabbed her coat, slipped on flats, and followed Luca toward the private service elevator. As the doors closed, she glanced back one last time. The city stretched beyond the glass walls, indifferent and glittering. That penthouse had been her cage, golden, silent, suffocating. Down in the lobby, the doorman handed her a small USB drive. "From last night," he whispered. "Security footage. You didn't get it from me." Emily took it with trembling fingers. "Thank you." Luca's hand rested briefly on her shoulder as they stepped into the morning sun. The light hurt her eyes but felt like freedom. Behind them, the penthouse doors sealed shut again. But for the first time, Emily wasn't trapped inside. She was walking away, And this time, she wasn't coming back. By the next morning, the story had escaped the penthouse walls. What began as whispers among the upper floors of Park Avenue had turned into headlines across social media. The video, grainy, captured on someone's iPhone, showed just enough. The rooftop lights, the laughter, the red wine cascading over Emily's head as her husband smiled in the background. It had been reposted, stitched, and slowed down until even strangers felt her humiliation. Emily sat in the back seat of Luca's car as they drove east, her phone buzzing non-stop on the seat beside her. Hashtags multiplied by the minute. Winewife, Marcus Hale, Manhattan cruelty. Even luxury gossip accounts had joined the frenzy, spinning their own versions of the truth. Some pitied her, others called it performance art. The internet didn't care about facts. It cared about spectacle. She turned the phone off and pressed her forehead against the cold window. The skyline shrank behind them, swallowed by gray clouds and the endless stretch of highway. "They're laughing at me," she whispered. "No," Luca said from the driver's seat, his eyes fixed on the road. "They're watching him fall apart. They just don't know it yet." He drove fast, one hand on the wheel, the other tapping the steering column in rhythm with his thoughts. "Daniel's working on freezing his accounts. That video's evidence now. Grace has the medical report. All we need is patience." Emily didn't answer. Her thoughts drifted back to Marcus. She could imagine him right now, pacing through his Park Avenue office, barking orders at Ava, trying to buy silence. He hated losing control more than anything, and the internet was one storm he couldn't charm his way out of. When they reached the Hamptons, the sea air hit her face like a blessing. The cottage was small, white shutters, a wraparound porch, and the soft smell of salt in the wind. It wasn't the Ritz or the Plaza, but it felt real. Safe. Inside, Luca dropped her bag near the door and handed her a phone charger. "You'll stay here. No one knows this place exists, not even Marcus." Emily nodded, looking around the cozy room. The walls were lined with old photographs, books, and a half-broken record player that hummed faintly when she brushed against it. For the first time in weeks, she could breathe. Luca stood by the window, scanning the quiet street. "Daniel will come tomorrow. Until then, don't answer calls from unknown numbers, and stay off social media." She almost laughed. Too late for that. Later, she made tea in the tiny kitchen, the steam curling around her face as she stared out at the ocean. Her phone lit up again. This time, a message from a name she didn't expect. Naomi Fields, a journalist she'd met once at a charity event. "I saw the video. I know what he's capable of. If you want to tell your side, I'll listen. No cameras, no spin." Emily hesitated. The thought of exposing more of her life made her stomach twist. But something about Naomi's tone felt different. Genuine. She typed a short reply. "Not yet, but soon." That night, the wind howled outside, rattling the shutters. Emily sat by the fireplace, wrapped in a blanket, staring into the flames. The baby kicked softly, a tiny heartbeat against her palm. "We're okay," she whispered. "We're safe now." But miles away, in the heart of Manhattan, Marcus was unraveling. The video had already cost him 2 investors. Sienna was demanding money to keep quiet. Ava was panicking over leaked invoices from her PR firm. His empire was cracking, one rumor at a time. And as Emily drifted to sleep in that quiet Hamptons cottage, a storm of scandal was brewing back in the city. One that would soon carry his name straight into ruin. The next morning arrived pale and cold, with a heavy fog rolling in from the Atlantic. Emily woke to the soft sound of waves breaking against the sand, the rhythmic crash like a heartbeat in the distance. For a moment she forgot everything, the humiliation, the cameras, the red wine. But then her phone vibrated on the nightstand, dragging her back to reality. A single text glowed on the screen. "He's furious. Be careful." It was from Naomi. Downstairs, Luca was already on the porch, coffee mug in one hand, phone in the other. His jacket hung open despite the chill. "Morning, Em," he said without looking up. "Daniel's ready for us. He's setting up at his office downtown. We'll leave in 20 minutes. Emily stepped outside, the cold biting her bare feet. "What happens now?" "Now," Luca said, pocketing his phone, "we start building a case before he builds one against you." The drive back to Manhattan was quiet, except for the occasional vibration of incoming calls they didn't answer. When they reached Daniel Price's office on Wall Street, the shift in atmosphere was immediate. Glass towers, men in suits, the hum of power and consequence. Daniel's firm occupied the 34th floor, all marble and steel, overlooking the Hudson River. Daniel met them in the lobby, mid-40s, calm eyes, the kind of man who spoke softly because he didn't have to raise his voice to be heard. "Mrs. Hale," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "You're safe here. Let's sit down and get to work." In his office, the blinds were half closed, sunlight slicing across the table. A Mont Blanc pen rested beside a stack of legal pads. Daniel leaned forward, his tone even but urgent. "Here's what we know. Marcus is already spinning his version. He's filed preliminary paperwork claiming you abandoned the marriage and are emotionally unstable due to pregnancy stress." Emily's eyes widened. "He's saying I'm crazy?" Daniel nodded grimly. "Classic playbook. But we're not playing defense. We're going on offense. I'll need documentation, financial statements, communication records, anything proving his misconduct." Luca reached into his jacket and slid a flash drive across the table. "Got something better. Bank transfers, shell companies, hidden accounts. He's been moving money offshore through fake PR invoices and consulting fees. My friend from the building sent it before security wiped the records." Daniel raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You're good at this." Luca smirked. "Family business." Emily managed a faint smile. "How much trouble will this cause him?" Daniel clicked open his laptop, the screen glowing with spreadsheets and timelines. "If verified, enough to freeze his assets before he knows what hit him. But we need corroboration, witnesses, receipts, someone inside his circle willing to talk." Emily hesitated. "What about Sienna or Ava?" "Maybe," Daniel said, typing quickly. "They're liabilities to him now. He'll try to silence them. If we can reach one first, she might flip." Luca leaned back, cracking his knuckles. "I'll find out who cracks faster." Daniel looked at Emily, softening his tone. "This will get messy. You'll see headlines, maybe worse, but the truth always comes out, eventually." Emily exhaled slowly, pressing a hand against her belly. "I just want it over. I want peace." Daniel nodded. "You will. But first, we need to make sure your child has a future free of his shadow." He slid a paper across the table, a draft of a temporary restraining order. "Sign this. It'll keep him from contacting or approaching you directly. If he tries, he's in contempt of court." Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up the pen, the Mont Blanc cool against her skin. The sound of it scratching across the page was steady, deliberate, the first step toward freedom. When she finished, Luca placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's done. He doesn't own you anymore." Daniel gathered the documents, nodding. "Let's move carefully from here. Marcus will fight back, but the higher they build the walls, the harder they fall." As they left the office, Emily looked out over the Hudson, calm now but deep and relentless, and knew that the tide was turning. By evening, Manhattan's glass towers glowed gold in the fading light, reflecting a city that looked peaceful but pulsed with chaos beneath the surface. Marcus Hale paced through his penthouse like a man trapped inside his own fortress. His phone buzzed non-stop, investors demanding answers, gossip blogs tagging his name, and his PR team begging him to issue a public apology. But Marcus wasn't the kind of man who apologized. He believed control could be bought, just like everything else. "Get me Ava," he barked into his phone, "and find out who leaked that footage. Someone's going to regret this." Down in the quiet Hamptons cottage, Emily sat by the window, wrapped in a knitted blanket. The wind carried the scent of salt and pine through the slightly open pane. It had been days since she'd left the city, but the echoes of humiliation still haunted her. Sometimes she'd wake up at night, heart pounding, replaying the moment the wine hit her skin. Other times, she'd catch herself placing a hand over her belly, whispering to the baby like they shared a secret strength. Dr. Grace Nguyen visited that afternoon. She carried her usual calm with her, like a shield against the world. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, unpacking her blood pressure cuff. "Tired, but better," Emily said. "The baby's kicking again, stronger." "That's good. He's responding to you being safe," Grace said with a small smile. She took Emily's vitals, scribbling notes. Then she glanced toward the table, where Emily's laptop lay open, a Starbucks cup beside it, half empty and cold. "You're working again?" "Just trying to stay busy, sketching designs for the nursery. It keeps my mind from wandering." Grace nodded. "Stay creative, it helps. But remember to rest. Your body remembers trauma, even if your mind tries to forget it." When Grace left, the cottage fell silent again. Emily wandered to the kitchen, washed her cup, then paused when her phone buzzed. A new message from a blocked number. Her heart stuttered. "Come home, Emily. You don't want to do this." The message was followed by another. "You're not the victim you think you are." Her hand shook, but she refused to reply. Instead, she opened her camera and took a screenshot. Evidence. Then she sent it to Daniel. Within seconds, his reply came through. "Good. Don't engage. He's baiting you. We'll handle this." Luca arrived not long after, his expression darker than usual. "I've been watching his moves," he said, dropping a newspaper onto the counter. The headline screamed, "Marcus Hale denies abuse claims, calls incident a private matter." Emily's stomach twisted. "He's painting me as hysterical." Luca's voice hardened. "Let him. He doesn't know what we have. Daniel's tracing those fake PR transfers. Once that goes public, his empire collapses." She turned away, tears threatening. "I hate that I still care what people think." Luca leaned against the counter, softer now. "That's because you're decent. He's not. That's why he's afraid." Later that night, after Luca left for the city, Emily sat in the small living room with only the fire for company. She pulled her MacBook Air onto her lap and opened a blank document. Instead of sketches, she began typing. A letter, not to Marcus but to herself. "You survived humiliation, fear, and control. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are more than what he took from you." As she typed, the words steadied her hands. Each keystroke felt like a small reclaiming of power. She didn't notice when the tears came, only that they weren't from sadness this time. They were release. Outside, the wind shifted, rattling the shutters gently. Somewhere in Manhattan, Marcus Hale was still shouting orders, trying to glue his empire back together. But marble, no matter how polished, cracks from within first. And as Emily finally fell asleep on the couch, the firelight flickering across her face, she didn't know that the first fracture in Marcus's world had already begun to split wide open. The morning broke gray and windless, the kind of sky that warned of a storm waiting offshore. Emily sat at the small wooden table in the cottage, staring at her phone. Messages from Daniel, Luca, and Grace sat unread. She couldn't bring herself to open them yet. The night before had been restless. Every sound of the waves outside felt like footsteps, every creak of the old house like a threat. Still, she stayed. She wasn't running anymore. Her laptop screen glowed faintly in the dim light. She scrolled through the news again, her name trending on gossip blogs and investment pages alike. Marcus was fighting to contain the chaos, his PR team spinning stories faster than truth could catch up. "Is Marcus Hale the real victim?" one headline read. The photo below showed him in sunglasses, stepping out of a black car, looking stoic and wounded. The comments underneath burned with cruelty. Then came a message she didn't expect, not from her allies, but from a stranger. The name read Sienna Brooks. Emily froze. The same woman who'd laughed as the wine soaked her dress. Her finger hovered over the screen. Against reason, she opened it. "I'm sorry," the message began. "He told us to do it. He said it was just a joke, that you'd overreact and he'd make you look crazy, but it got out of control. I didn't know he was recording everything. I didn't know he'd leak it." Emily stared, heart hammering. "He leaked it himself?" she typed. "Yes," Sienna replied. "He said it would make him look like the victim, the humiliated husband. He's losing his mind now. He's blaming everyone. I want out. Please. I have proof of what he paid me and Ava. Can we talk?" Emily didn't know whether to trust her, but Daniel had been waiting for something like this, a witness inside Marcus's circle. She forwarded the screenshots to him with one line, "She's ready to flip." Within an hour, Daniel called. "Perfect. We'll arrange a protected statement. Tell her not to contact Marcus. We'll handle the rest." Meanwhile, in Manhattan, Ava Larkin sat alone in the PR firm's corner office, a cold Starbucks on her desk and fear crawling up her throat. Marcus's voice still rang in her ear from the last call. "You fix this or you're done." He didn't mean unemployed. He meant erased. She opened her email and reread the memo she'd drafted weeks ago, the one linking Marcus's personal expenses to company funds. She'd kept a copy, just in case. Now it might save her. Her assistant entered quietly. A reporter called again. "Naomi Fields." Ava looked up sharply. "Did you tell her anything?" "No, but she says she already knows about the fake invoices." Ava's hand tightened around the coffee cup. "Tell her to call back tomorrow." Her voice trembled. "And get me Daniel Price's number." By nightfall, Naomi sat in her apartment overlooking Central Park, phone to her ear, recorder off. "I'm not here for gossip," she told Ava. "I'm here for the truth. People need to know who he really is." Ava hesitated, then whispered, "He used us. He used everyone. There's money laundering, investor fraud, everything. But if I talk, I need protection." Naomi's tone softened. "You'll have it." Across the river, Emily stared into the fireplace, the glow flickering across her face. The phone on the table buzzed again. Another message from Daniel. "We've got both women ready to testify. Stay low. Tomorrow, we move." She exhaled, the sound half relief, half fear. The tide was shifting. The same women Marcus had used to destroy her were now about to destroy him. Outside, the storm finally arrived, rain tapping against the window like a warning. And as thunder rolled over the Hamptons shore, Emily knew the reckoning she'd prayed for was no longer a dream. It was already on its way. Rain poured over Manhattan the next morning, slicking the streets in silver. The city pulsed with the usual noise of horns and heels, but somewhere high above it all, Marcus Hale was losing control. His reflection in the penthouse window looked older, sharper, desperate. Calls from his investors went unanswered. His PR team had stopped defending him. The storm outside matched the one brewing inside his head. "Where's Ava?" He snapped into the phone. "Why hasn't she fixed this?" His assistant stammered. She resigned this morning, sir. Left her badge on the desk." Marcus froze. "What about Sienna?" "She's not answering either. Rumor is she's talking to a lawyer." He slammed his fist against the glass, the sound muffled by the rain. Ungrateful snakes. Down on Wall Street, Daniel Price sat in his office with Luca beside him, files spread across the table. The flash drives, screenshots, and testimonies from both Sienna and Ava were now neatly compiled. Every payment Marcus had made, every shell company, every offshore transfer was documented. Daniel adjusted his tie and smiled faintly. He thinks he's fighting a scandal. He doesn't realize he's about to face federal charges. Luca leaned back in his chair. "You're sure this will hold?" "Everything checks out. Fraud, tax evasion, corporate misconduct. He's cornered." Daniel's eyes flicked to his watch. "The only thing left is timing. Emily signs the affidavit this afternoon, and then we file. But Marcus won't go quietly. He'll try to get to her first." Back in the Hamptons, Emily sat at the table with her laptop open, waiting for Daniel's video call. Her hands trembled slightly as she signed the final document electronically. Her statement of abuse, financial manipulation, and emotional cruelty. Every click felt like a door closing behind her. When she hit submit, she whispered, "It's done." Almost immediately, headlights flashed outside the window. Her breath caught. She peeked through the curtains and froze. A black car idled at the end of the driveway, Marcus's driver. Her phone buzzed. "You can't hide from me, Emily." Her chest tightened. She dialed Luca instantly. "He's here." "I'm on my way," Luca said. "Lock the door. Do not move." Emily's heart pounded as thunder cracked overhead. She backed away from the window, clutching her phone like a weapon. Minutes crawled by until the sound of tires crunching gravel echoed again, this time speeding away. Relief hit her in waves. Luca arrived 15 minutes later, soaked but calm. "He sent his driver to scare you," he said. "He won't touch you. Not now. He's too busy trying to plug holes in his sinking ship." By evening, Daniel filed the injunctions electronically. The moment the documents hit the federal database, a chain reaction began. Bank alerts triggered freezes. Lawyers received subpoenas. And somewhere between those walls of glass and marble, Marcus's phone exploded with notifications. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, pacing his office. "Asset freeze? Investigation?" His attorney's voice was grim over the phone. "They've got evidence, Marcus. It's not just rumors anymore. You're being audited." Marcus's knees went weak. For the first time, fear cracked through the arrogance. Meanwhile, Daniel, Luca, and Emily gathered in Daniel's office late that night. Rain streaked the windows, thunder rolling in the distance. Daniel slid a set of printed papers across the desk. "Everything's in motion. Tomorrow morning, it becomes public record. You'll be protected by law. He can't touch you again." Emily stared at the pages, the legal language blurring slightly through her tears. "So it's really over?" Luca rested a hand on her shoulder. "Not over," he said softly. "Just turning." Outside, the rain began to ease, the storm breaking into quiet. Emily leaned back, exhaling for what felt like the first time in months. The sound of her baby's heartbeat in her memory steadied her. And as dawn crept toward the skyline, Marcus Hale finally realized what Emily Carter already knew. The moment you think you're untouchable is the moment your downfall truly begins. The rain had barely stopped when Emily woke to a stabbing pain low in her stomach. It wasn't sharp enough to scream, but deep enough to steal her breath. She sat up slowly, pressing a hand to her belly. The baby kicked once, twice, then went still. Her heart lurched. "No," she whispered, panic rising. "Please, not now." The cottage was quiet. Luca had gone back to Manhattan for meetings with Daniel. She reached for her phone, dialing the only person she trusted in that moment. "Grace," she gasped when the doctor answered. "Something's wrong. I'm cramping. The baby's not moving much." Grace's tone shifted instantly. All business. "Emily, listen to me. You need to go to Mount Sinai now. Don't wait. I'll meet you there. You'll be okay. Just breathe." By the time she arrived, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely sign the admission papers. Nurses rushed her to a private room, their voices calm but urgent. The rhythmic beeping of monitors filled the air, grounding her in sound while her mind raced through every worst possibility. Grace entered moments later, her scrubs damp from rain, her expression steady. "You did the right thing coming in," she said, placing a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder. "Your body's under too much stress. The baby's fine for now, but we're not taking chances." Emily tried to breathe evenly. "It's Marcus," she whispered. "He won't stop calling. He sent someone to the cottage. Every time I close my eyes, I see him." Grace frowned. "You're not alone in this anymore. You have legal protection. Let's keep you calm. I'll monitor you overnight." Hours passed in a blur of hospital lights and whispered conversations. Emily's contractions subsided slowly, her pulse steadying. Grace sat beside her bed, reviewing charts. "The baby's strong," she said finally, "but you can't keep living in fear. Stress is poison right now." Emily nodded, staring at the ceiling. "I thought I could handle it, but it's like he's everywhere. In my head, in the news, even in my dreams." Before Grace could reply, Emily's phone buzzed on the tray table. Another, private number. Grace reached over and silenced it. "Not now. You need peace." But Emily's curiosity got the better of her. When the call came again, she pressed answer and switched it to speaker. "Marcus," she said quietly. A pause. Then his voice, slick and deliberate. "Emily, you're making a mistake. You think those lawyers care about you? They'll bleed you dry. Come home and we'll fix this." Grace crossed her arms. "She's in a hospital, Mr. Hale, and this call is being recorded for her safety." Marcus laughed bitterly. "A doctor now, huh? You think she needs protection from me?" His voice dropped to a whisper, venomous. "I let those girls have their fun, that's all. You made it worse by running your mouth." Grace met Emily's eyes. They both realized what he'd just admitted. Grace leaned forward and spoke calmly. "Thank you for confirming that, Mr. Hale. Goodbye." She ended the call and immediately texted Daniel. "We got him. Confession on record." Emily sat frozen, her heart pounding. The words replayed in her head. "I let those girls have their fun." It wasn't remorse. It was pride. Grace squeezed her hand. "Now you have proof. That's the final piece." Emily exhaled shakily, the weight of months lifting just slightly. He finally showed who he really is. Outside, thunder rolled faintly, but inside the hospital room, there was only the steady rhythm of the monitor. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. Grace smiled. He knows his mom's fighting back. Emily laughed softly through her tears, a sound that felt foreign but healing. As she closed her eyes, exhaustion giving way to calm, Emily realized this wasn't just survival anymore. It was victory beginning to breathe. The next morning dawned pale and sharp, Manhattan glistening after the storm like a city washed clean. But beneath the glass and steel, the tension was anything but pure. Inside Daniel Price's office on Wall Street, the air smelled faintly of coffee and adrenaline. Stacks of folders covered the table. Bank statements, shell company filings, encrypted ledgers. A soft hum came from the MacBook Pro glowing in front of Daniel as he pieced the puzzle together, one transaction at a time. Luca stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the city stretch beneath them. "You think this is enough to bury him?" Daniel didn't look up. "It's not just enough," he said, scrolling fast. "It's a blueprint for fraud. He's been moving investor money into offshore accounts under fake consulting fees. Here, look." He turned the laptop toward Luca. The screen showed a spreadsheet, hundreds of transfers labeled innocently. Ava Larkin PR Services, Brooks Modeling Consulting, Hale Development Advisors. Each payment led to the same end, a numbered account in the Cayman Islands. Luca whistled low. Smart. He launders through his lovers. Smart until it's traceable, Daniel replied. He got sloppy. Greedy men always do. At that moment, Emily entered, wrapped in a pale blue coat, her face drawn but determined. Grace had insisted she rest another day, but she couldn't stay still knowing what was unfolding. Did you find anything new? She asked, lowering herself carefully into the chair across from Daniel. Daniel smiled faintly. You could say that. Your husband has been robbing his investors blind. We're preparing the filings for both civil and criminal action. Once this goes to the authorities, his accounts will be frozen worldwide. Emily looked at the papers spread before her. Numbers, signatures, and lies dressed up as success. He built everything on illusion, she whispered. Even me. Luca reached over, squeezing her hand. Not anymore. You're not his illusion, you're his consequence. Daniel clicked open another folder, revealing email chains between Marcus and his accountant. These messages confirm intent. He knew exactly what he was doing. And, he paused, smiling slightly. We also have your hospital call recording. Grace forwarded it. That confession seals his fate. Emily exhaled, relief mixing with disbelief. He always thought he was untouchable. Men like him think money makes them invisible, Daniel said. They forget paper always leaves a trail. As he spoke, the office door opened. Naomi Fields entered, her press badge tucked away, wearing civilian clothes. I heard you've got something, she said softly. I'm not here as a journalist, I'm here as a witness. Ava called me this morning. She's ready to testify. She has the original invoices. Daniel's brows lifted. Perfect. That corroborates everything. Once the SEC gets this, he'll be finished. Naomi looked at Emily with quiet respect. You started a storm, and now the truth's going to clean it all. Emily smiled faintly. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. But if peace means he answers for what he's done, then so be it. Daniel pushed a final document across the table. One last thing. This is your legal petition for financial protection, child support, asset division, and damages. You sign this, and it guarantees security for you and the baby, no matter what happens to him. Her fingers trembled slightly as she took the Mont Blanc pen. She signed her name, each stroke deliberate. The moment the ink dried, something inside her shifted. For months she'd been the victim of his wealth and charm. Now she was the author of his undoing. Luca leaned against the desk, smirking. Guess the golden boy's about to see what broke feels like. Daniel gathered the papers, nodding. Next stop, court filings and federal review. By the end of the week, Marcus Hale's empire collapses. Emily stood steady and tall, hand resting protectively on her belly. Let him feel powerless for once, she said quietly. Outside, Wall Street buzzed with life, unaware that inside one glass tower, a woman who'd been humiliated with red wine had just rewritten her own worth and ended a millionaire's reign. The invitation arrived that morning, printed on thick ivory paper embossed with gold. The Hale Foundation Gala supporting maternal health initiatives, it read, in Marcus's familiar signature font. The irony was a knife twist. Emily held the card between her fingers, reading it again and again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less cruel. Luca took it from her hand, scanned it once, and let out a dry laugh. Maternal health? The man who poured wine on his pregnant wife now claims to be saving mothers? You couldn't write satire this good. Daniel, sitting at the table with his laptop open, didn't laugh. It's not a coincidence. He's using the gala to whitewash his reputation, rebuild his image before the indictments hit. He'll make a speech about forgiveness, pretend to be the victim, and throw a few million in donations to buy sympathy. Emily looked down, her voice soft. He's doing it at the plaza? Daniel nodded. Grand ballroom, same crowd that watched him humiliate you. That's his comfort zone. Applause, cameras, money. But this time, the applause won't save him. Luca leaned forward, elbows on the table. So what's our move? Daniel turned his screen toward them, revealing an email draft. We've secured clearance from the judge to serve him the injunction and asset freeze order in public, as soon as he's on record at the gala. Naomi's covering the event as press. She'll make sure it's documented. Emily frowned, heart pounding. You want me there? Yes, Daniel said gently. You don't have to confront him, but your presence will matter. When the truth hits, you'll stand as proof. Calm, strong, untouchable. Luca shook his head. She's 7 months pregnant. I don't want her anywhere near that snake pit. But Emily straightened in her chair, the tremor gone from her voice. I'll go. I need to see it. I need to see him lose what he thought he owned. That afternoon, they began to prepare. Naomi stopped by the Hamptons' cottage with 2 garment bags and a reassuring smile. No red, no white, she said. You need something that says power without trying. Black silk, simple, elegant. The kind of dress that makes people apologize without you saying a word. As Emily changed in the bedroom, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her body had changed, her face a little fuller, her eyes older but sharper now. She wasn't the woman who'd stood on that rooftop trembling. She was someone forged in fire and humiliation, and now rebuilt from it. Grace called that evening, checking in. You're sure you're strong enough for this? She asked. I'm not doing it for revenge, Emily said. I'm doing it so my child never grows up thinking silence is survival. When she hung up, Luca was waiting in the living room, leaning against the doorframe. You look like Mom? He said quietly. Right before she'd walk into Dad's board meetings and make everyone there nervous. Emily smiled faintly. Guess it runs in the family. They rehearsed everything, how she'd enter, where Daniel and Naomi would be, when the papers would be served. Luca coordinated security, ensuring no one could get too close. Every move was planned like choreography for a war waged in elegance. As the night deepened, they drove back toward the city. The Manhattan skyline glowed ahead, tall and glittering, like a million eyes waiting to see who would fall. Emily pressed her palm to her belly. The baby shifted, a reminder that she wasn't just walking into battle for herself. When the plaza's golden lights finally appeared at the end of Fifth Avenue, Emily whispered to the child inside her, We're not here to hide anymore. We're here to finish this. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what came next. The morning of the gala arrived cold and dazzling. Manhattan gleamed under a sheet of pale sunlight, the kind that made every window look like a mirror. Inside the Hamptons' cottage, Emily woke before dawn. She sat by the window with a cup of tea, staring at the waves as they broke against the shore. Each crash steadied her heartbeat. Each breath reminded her that tonight would change everything. Luca entered quietly, his leather jacket already on, phone pressed to his ear. Security's in place, he said, lowering his voice. Daniel's got a legal team ready at the plaza. Naomi's crew will be inside by 5. We're set. He hung up, glancing at her. You sure about this? Emily nodded, calm but firm. I've been hiding long enough. The drive to the city felt endless. The skyline appeared slowly on the horizon, glimmering with false innocence. Emily rested her hand on her belly as the baby shifted softly inside her. She whispered, We're almost there. When they arrived at Daniel's office, the building buzzed like a hive preparing for something monumental. Daniel was already waiting in his glass-walled conference room, tie loosened, laptop glowing with last-minute updates. Marcus has doubled his guest list, he said. Politicians, investors, CEOs. He's desperate for validation. Emily took a slow breath. Then let him have his audience. The higher he climbs tonight, the harder the fall. Daniel smiled faintly. That's the spirit. He handed her a sleek black envelope, her invitation. You'll enter through a side entrance. Luca's men will be nearby. Stay calm, stay silent. Once the documents are served, it's over. Naomi arrived moments later, camera in hand but dressed like a guest. Press credentials won't help me tonight, she said. I'm going undercover. If he tries to spin it, I'll catch every second. Luca checked his phone, frowning. One of my guys heard talk of something going down. Marcus might have a plan for you. Some kind of accident. We're tightening security. Emily's pulse quickened, but she didn't flinch. He's not going to scare me away from the truth. By mid-afternoon, Fifth Avenue was already alive with limousines and photographers setting up near the iconic entrance of the Plaza Hotel. Emily changed in Daniel's office, slipping into the black silk gown Naomi had chosen. It hugged her form perfectly, dignified yet powerful. Her reflection in the mirror startled her. Elegant, glowing, unbreakable. Luca stood behind her, straightening his cuffs. You sure you're ready? She met his eyes through the mirror. I was ready the night he poured that wine on me. The car ride to the plaza was silent. the city lights flickering across her face like fragments of memory. They passed Tiffany's, Cartier, Dior, the temples of luxury that Marcus had once worshipped. Emily stared out the window and felt nothing. Money no longer impressed her. Truth did. At a stoplight, she looked toward the plaza, its white facade gleaming under the golden glow of early evening. Luca's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. Got word. Marcus hired private security. He's expecting trouble. Emily gave a small, knowing smile. He should. Inside the plaza, the ballroom was being transformed. Crystal chandeliers reflecting rivers of light, champagne towers catching the glint of gold. Waiters polished silver trays while the sound system tested soft jazz. Marcus, flawless in a tailored tuxedo, walked through the chaos with a champagne flute in hand, rehearsing his smile in the mirror. Tonight, he murmured to himself, we reset everything. Outside, the Hale Foundation banner fluttered in the cold wind. Emily stepped out of the car, black gown flowing around her, eyes fixed on the glowing doors ahead. Luca offered his arm. She took it, her fingers steady. And as the doorman opened the entrance to the plaza, Emily Carter crossed the threshold not as the broken wife from the rooftop, but as the storm Marcus never saw coming. The grand chandeliers of the plaza shimmered like captured stars, their light cascading across marble floors polished to a mirror's edge. Waiters floated between tables draped in gold silk, carrying flutes of champagne and plates lined with caviar. A string quartet played softly, the music poised between elegance and tension. The air smelled of perfume, money, and ambition. Marcus Hale's favorite blend. He stood near the center of the ballroom, every inch of him groomed for the cameras. His tuxedo gleamed black under the lights, his cufflinks subtle but expensive. When he laughed, it was the laugh of a man who still believed the world bent to his charm. Around him, whispers rippled, some pity, some mockery. But Marcus ignored them all. Tonight, he would rewrite the narrative. On stage, a large banner read, "The Hale Foundation Gala for Maternal Health." The hypocrisy almost glowed. Cameras flashed as reporters murmured questions about his comeback. Marcus flashed a sympathetic smile. Tragedy, he said smoothly, has a way of humbling even the strongest men. Naomi Fields moved among the guests, her hair styled and her expression neutral, camera disguised as a clutch in her hand. Every lens she turned captured Marcus's smirk, every word recorded. Across the room, Daniel Price and Luca stood near the bar, suits crisp, eyes scanning the crowd like hunters waiting for the signal. And then she entered. The chatter softened as Emily Carter stepped into the ballroom, her black silk gown gliding across the floor like liquid night. Her hair, swept back into a soft chignon, framed a face that held neither fear nor anger, only quiet resolve. She didn't need jewelry. Her calm was enough. Conversations died mid-sentence, heads turned. Even the quartet stumbled for a note. Marcus froze. For the first time that evening, the practiced confidence in his eyes faltered. He hadn't expected her. He hadn't expected this. Emily? He breathed, too softly for the crowd but loud enough for Naomi's microphone to catch. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than his lies. Luca moved beside her, offering subtle protection while Daniel signaled to the legal courier waiting near the stage. Everything was timed, every second choreographed to perfection. Marcus recovered quickly, flashing a rehearsed grin for the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "what an honor to see my wife joining us tonight. It seems love truly conquers all." A polite laugh fluttered across the room, hollow and uneasy. Emily's expression didn't change. Daniel nodded once, and the courier stepped forward, weaving through the crowd with a crisp envelope in hand. Marcus didn't see him until the man was standing directly in front of him. "Mr. Hale," the courier said, his voice carrying just enough authority to still the room, "you've been served." Marcus blinked, confusion flashing to fury as he ripped open the envelope. Inside, the papers gleamed white under the chandelier light. A federal injunction, asset freeze order, and pending fraud investigation. Whispers erupted. Cameras clicked like gunfire. Naomi's hidden mic captured every word as Marcus stammered. "This is a mistake, a misunderstanding." But Daniel stepped forward calmly. "No mistake, Mr. Hale, just accountability." Marcus turned toward Emily, his mask slipping. "You think you've won?" he hissed. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I didn't come here to win, Marcus. I came to end it." The quartet stopped playing altogether. The silence was deafening. Security began to move as Marcus's composure crumbled. The smile, the charm, gone. His empire was collapsing in real time, and every guest in that glittering ballroom saw it. Emily took one last look at him, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "For him," she whispered, meaning the child. Then she turned away, her heels clicking against the marble, each step echoing like a verdict. As the crowd parted in stunned silence, Marcus Hale stood alone beneath the chandeliers. The man who once believed he owned the world, now realizing the only thing he ever truly owned was his own downfall. The ballroom had gone still, the way a city does right before a blackout. Marcus Hale stood frozen, clutching the papers like a drowning man grips a stone. Cameras continued flashing, but now every lens was aimed at him, not in admiration but fascination. People weren't whispering his praises anymore. They were whispering about his fall. Emily paused at the edge of the marble floor. For a moment, she simply looked at him, the man who'd once promised her the world, then turned it into a cage. She could see the panic in his eyes, the calculation working behind them as he tried to find an escape. But there wasn't one. Not this time. He turned to the microphone, voice cracking but defiant. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a setup. My wife and her brother have fabricated lies to destroy my reputation." Gasps rippled through the crowd. But before anyone could respond, Naomi's voice cut cleanly through the air from the press section. "Then perhaps you can explain this, Mr. Hale." Screens flickered to life behind the stage. The presentation he'd prepared, charts of fake donations and glowing testimonials, vanished. In their place, video clips began to play. The rooftop party, the laughter, the red wine cascading over Emily's head while Marcus looked on, smirking. The audience fell silent. Marcus's face drained of color. "Turn that off," he shouted, lunging toward the AV table. But it was too late. The clip looped once more, then cut to spreadsheets, bank transfers, shell companies, fake invoices, all the evidence Daniel had compiled. The Hale Foundation banner glowed above it all like a cruel joke. Emily's voice rose, soft but unwavering. "You built your life on humiliation and deceit. You thought money made you untouchable. But tonight, everyone sees who you really are." The crowd erupted in murmurs. A senator's wife whispered, "My husband invested with him." Someone else hissed, "He's finished." Marcus looked around wildly, sweat glistening at his temple. "You think this means anything? I can fix this. I have lawyers." Daniel stepped forward, legal documents in hand. "Your lawyers are already disbarred or indicted. The SEC has frozen your accounts, and the DA's office has opened an inquiry. The party's over." Luca moved to Emily's side, a solid wall of protection. Marcus's gaze flicked to him, venomous. "You think hiding behind your thug of a brother makes you strong?" Luca didn't flinch. His voice was low, steady. "I don't hit men who've already destroyed themselves." A ripple of laughter, sharp, uncomfortable, passed through the crowd. For the first time, Marcus looked small. Emily stepped forward. Every eye in the ballroom followed her. "Do you remember that night?" she said, voice trembling but strong. "When you let them pour wine over me? When everyone laughed?" She reached for the table beside her, where a half-empty bottle of red sat in a silver chiller. Lifting it carefully, she met his eyes. "This was your idea of power." Marcus backed up, hands raised. "Emily, don't." She didn't pour it on him. Instead, she tilted the bottle and poured it onto the floor between them. The crimson spread across the marble like a wound opening, then disappearing into itself. "That's all your empire ever was," she said quietly. "A stain pretending to be a crown." The audience applauded, not loudly but with the heavy weight of understanding. It was the kind of applause that meant sympathy had shifted. Emily wasn't the victim anymore. She was the truth standing tall amid lies. Marcus's security finally approached, murmuring about escorting him out. He didn't resist. He couldn't. The cameras followed as he was led away, his shoulders slumped, the papers still crumpled in his shaking hands. Emily stood there, chest rising and falling, the faintest smile breaking through tears. Daniel came beside her, whispering, "It's done. You've won." She shook her head softly. "No, I've healed." And as Marcus Hale disappeared through the ballroom doors, the red wine still glistening under the chandeliers, Emily realized the same thing the city soon would. That justice, when poured slowly, stains deeper than revenge ever could. The moment Marcus Hale was escorted from the plaza's ballroom, the illusion of power shattered like glass underfoot. The room buzzed with murmurs, the sharp, electric kind that follows scandal. Guests whispered behind manicured hands, investors slipped out discreetly, and cameras pivoted to capture every angle of the fallen king's retreat. Emily stood near the edge of the stage, her chest still tight, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Luca stayed close, his expression unreadable, scanning the room for any lingering threat. But there was none. The danger had already been dismantled. Marcus's empire was collapsing in real time, and there was nothing left for him to control. Daniel stepped up to the microphone, his calm voice cutting through the noise. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "for those wondering, what you witnessed tonight wasn't a spectacle. It was truth. The same truth too many powerful men think they can bury under money and image." The crowd hushed. Even the chandeliers seemed to listen. Daniel continued, holding up the injunction papers. "These documents represent accountability, financial, legal, and moral. Mr. Hale has violated securities laws, defrauded investors, and committed acts of domestic abuse. This isn't opinion, it's evidence." Flashbulbs flared again, capturing Emily's face. She didn't hide this time. Her hand rested gently on her belly, a quiet symbol of resilience. She didn't speak, but her silence resonated louder than any statement could. Naomi, camera in hand, moved closer, her lens focusing not on Marcus's humiliation, but on Emily's calm. Later that night, her footage would air nationwide. The fall of Marcus Hale, the power of truth. But for now, she was simply a witness to justice in motion. At the back of the room, 2 uniformed officers entered, their presence subtle but decisive. They didn't make an announcement, didn't need to. Everyone knew who they were there for. Marcus appeared moments later, flanked by security, face pale, tie loosened, anger barely restrained. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, voice echoing. "You think you can humiliate me? You think this changes anything?" Daniel turned, composed as ever. "It already has." One officer stepped forward. "Mr. Hale, you're under investigation for fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. You'll need to come with us." Gasps spread like wildfire. Cameras rolled. Marcus looked around, but there was nowhere left to look. No allies, no friends. Sienna and Ava were gone. His investors had vanished. Even the staff avoided eye contact. He turned toward Emily, desperate, voice breaking. "You did this. You ruined me." Her expression stayed calm, but her words cut clean. "You ruined yourself. I just stopped pretending not to see it." The officers guided him out. The doors closed behind them with a heavy thud, and the sound carried a finality that settled deep in Emily's chest. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, unexpectedly, applause began, soft at first from a woman near the front, then another, then the entire ballroom joined in. Not a standing ovation of spectacle, but a slow, steady acknowledgement of courage, of truth, of a woman who refused to stay silent. Emily's eyes welled, but she didn't cry. Luca placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his voice low. "It's over, sis. You did it." Daniel nodded, pride flickering behind his professional calm. "You didn't just survive him, Emily. You dismantled him." Outside the plaza, the flash of police lights painted the wet pavement blue and red. Reporters shouted questions, microphones raised like weapons. Emily didn't answer any of them. She walked past them all, shoulders squared, eyes forward. The city that had once watched her humiliation now watched her victory. And as she stepped into the cool Manhattan night, the skyline glimmering above, Emily Carter didn't just reclaim her name. She became a reminder that no empire built on cruelty can stand once truth finds its voice. The morning after the gala broke with the kind of quiet that follows a storm. Not peace, but aftermath. Manhattan was still buzzing from the scandal that had exploded overnight. Every news outlet carried the same headline: Marcus Hale, arrested for fraud and domestic abuse allegations. His photograph was everywhere, leaving the plaza in handcuffs, his once polished expression twisted by disbelief. The man who used to own the room couldn't even own his own narrative anymore. Inside Daniel's Wall Street office, sunlight filtered through tall glass windows. Emily sat at the table, a cup of coffee untouched before her. She looked pale, drained, but lighter somehow, as if the weight she'd carried for years had finally lifted. Daniel closed his laptop and leaned back. "The DA's office is moving faster than I expected. They've frozen all his assets. The feds will indict him within a week." Luca stood near the window, arms crossed, watching traffic crawl below. What happens to his properties? The penthouse, the restaurants? Daniel smiled slightly. Seized. Every one of them. The investors will get their share once restitution is approved. Emily's protected. Her trust fund will be separate. Emily blinked, still trying to process it all. So it's really over? Legally? Daniel said. Almost. Emotionally? That takes longer. But you did everything right. She nodded faintly, eyes drifting toward the skyline. The city she once associated with shame now felt like redemption. Yet deep down she wasn't celebrating. He won't change, she whispered. Even if he's in prison, he'll never understand what he did. Luca turned toward her, his voice softer than usual. Understanding doesn't matter. Consequence does. Across town, Marcus Hale sat in a gray cell that smelled of bleach and regret. The fluorescent light above buzzed endlessly. His lawyer had quit that morning, his phone privileges suspended. All that remained was silence. For the first time in his life, there was no mirror to admire himself in, no one to lie to, just the sound of his own breathing, shallow, uneven. He ran a hand through his hair, muttering under his breath. They'll forget. They always forget. But even he didn't believe it. That same afternoon, Naomi's story went live. Her headline was clean and cutting. From rooftop humiliation to legal triumph, the woman who refused to break. The article detailed everything. The gala, the evidence, the confession, even the symbolic wine poured on the floor. It went viral within hours. Grace texted Emily a link. Read it when you're ready. It's beautiful. Emily hesitated, then opened it. Her breath caught as she read Naomi's final line. In the end, it wasn't revenge that defeated Marcus Hale. It was truth, steady, quiet, unstoppable truth, carried by a woman who refused to be silenced. Tears slid down Emily's cheeks, but this time they didn't sting. They felt clean. Later that evening, she returned to the Hamptons cottage with Luca. The sky was painted pink and gold, the sea calm again. She stood on the porch, watching the waves roll in, the rhythm soothing. The baby kicked gently, reminding her that life was still moving forward. Luca joined her, leaning on the railing. You know, he said, Mom used to say karma always finds its way home. Guess she was right. Emily smiled faintly. Karma doesn't rush. It just waits for the right moment. Inside, her phone buzzed. Daniel's message. It's official. The case is federal now. You'll never have to see him again. She stared at the screen, then at the horizon. For the first time in months, she felt her lungs fill completely. No fear, no anger, just space. And as the sun dipped below the ocean, Marcus Hale sat alone in a cell counting the seconds he'd once used to control others, while Emily Carter counted the heartbeats of the life she had finally reclaimed. 3 weeks later, Manhattan had moved on, but Emily hadn't, not entirely. Healing, she learned, wasn't about forgetting. It was about rebuilding, brick by brick, piece by piece. The headlines had begun to fade. Marcus Hale's trial was set for the spring, and his face no longer dominated the screens downtown. For the first time in months, Emily could walk the streets without feeling eyes on her. That morning, she woke to the soft hum of city life outside her window. She wasn't in the Hamptons anymore. She'd moved into a small apartment in Brooklyn, overlooking the East River. It wasn't grand, but it was hers. The air smelled faintly of coffee and possibility. She padded barefoot into the kitchen, where light spilled across the counter, warming her hands as she held her mug. The nursery sat just off the living room, small, quiet, painted in gentle tones of sage and ivory. On the dresser sat her mother's Tiffany locket, her sketchbook, and a stack of baby clothes neatly folded. A mobile hung above the crib, its stars spinning slowly in the morning light. She ran her hand over the wooden frame, smiling softly. You're going to love it here, she whispered to the life growing inside her. A knock sounded at the door. Luca stepped in, holding a brown paper bag that smelled unmistakably of bagels and coffee. I come bearing breakfast and brotherly judgment, he said. She laughed, shaking her head. You don't have to check on me every day. Yeah, he said, setting the bag down. I do? That's the job. He glanced around the apartment approvingly. Not bad. Cozy, peaceful. Never thought I'd see you choose Brooklyn over Fifth Avenue. Emily smiled. I don't need marble floors anymore. I just need peace. Luca nodded, then looked at her carefully. You've got that look again, the one that means you're thinking too much. She leaned against the counter. Do you ever wonder what happens to people like Marcus when the cameras go away? I keep waiting to feel closure, But it's not there, he sighed. Closure's a myth, Em. What you got is better. Distance. Let him rot in his own silence. She nodded slowly. He was right. A few minutes later, the buzzer rang again. Daniel arrived, his suit jacket draped over one arm and a folder tucked under the other. I come with updates, he said, setting the folder on the table. Settlement finalized. You officially own half the penthouse and full custody. He tried to appeal, but the court rejected it. Emily blinked. It's really done? Daniel smiled. Completely. You don't owe him anything, financially or otherwise. She sank into a chair, her breath catching. Thank you, Daniel, for everything. He shook his head. You don't owe me thanks. You did this. You fought when most people would have folded. Luca poured him coffee. So what now? Daniel grinned faintly. Now she gets to live, maybe even be happy. When he left, the apartment grew quiet again. Emily sat by the window, watching sunlight shimmer on the water. The baby kicked softly, and she pressed her hand to her belly. We made it, she whispered. Later that afternoon, Grace visited with a gift, a copy of Atomic Habits, wrapped neatly with a bow. Small steps, she said, smiling. That's how you build a new life. Emily hugged her, tears filling her eyes. Thank you for never giving up on me. Grace smiled. You never gave up on yourself. I just reminded you. As the day faded into a soft amber glow, Emily opened the book, inhaling the scent of new pages and hope. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Unpredictable, unstoppable. And as she stood on her balcony watching the skyline burn gold, Emily Carter finally understood that healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about writing a future where she was no longer afraid to be seen. Spring unfolded slowly across New York, the kind of spring that makes even the busiest hearts pause. Central Park was a patchwork of green and gold, cherry blossoms floating down like soft confetti. Emily Carter stood beneath one of those trees, sunlight filtering through her hair, her belly round with the promise of new life. For once, she wasn't thinking about the past. She was simply breathing. It had been 4 months since the gala. Marcus Hale was awaiting trial in a federal detention center, his empire reduced to numbers on frozen accounts. The tabloids had stopped calling. The world had moved on, but Emily's peace was deliberate, not absence of noise, but control of it. She'd built a rhythm, morning walks, afternoon sketching, evenings reading by the window. Slowly, the wounds had turned into scars, and the scars into stories. One Friday evening, Grace convinced her to attend a small art gallery opening in Soho. It's not about mingling, Grace had said, smiling. It's about reminding yourself that life is still beautiful. Emily hesitated, then agreed. That night, she wore a soft cream dress that hugged her shape and made her feel quietly radiant. The gallery buzzed with music and low conversation. Paintings hung like captured dreams on white walls, the air rich with the scent of wine and varnish. She was standing before a large canvas, a skyline at dusk, when a voice spoke beside her. It's funny, the man said, how New York always looks loneliest when it's most alive. She turned. He was tall, with sandy hair and kind blue eyes, his posture unguarded. I'm sorry, he added quickly. I didn't mean to interrupt. She smiled. You didn't. You're right, actually. The city's beautiful from far away, but up close, it's chaos. He chuckled. That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm Michael Reed. Emily, she said softly. He didn't flinch at the name. Didn't connect it to the headlines that had once defined her. Nice to meet you, Emily. I designed the gallery space. You're the architect? She asked, surprised. Guilty, he said, grinning. But this place is nothing without the art. The artists here built something out of pain. I think that's kind of heroic. Something in the way he said it disarmed her. They talked for nearly an hour about design, color, rhythm, and how buildings and people both needed foundations to stand again. He didn't pry, didn't ask about Marcus or the past. He asked about her work, her dreams. When she mentioned her baby, his eyes lit up. You must be excited. I am, she said truthfully. Terrified too, but mostly grateful. He nodded. That's the best place to be, right in the middle of both. When the evening ended, he walked her to her car. The city lights reflected off puddles, and she could see his reflection beside hers. Easy, unforced. Before they parted, he handed her a small card. I'm helping design a community center in Queens. We're building a section for art therapy and interior design workshops. We could use someone with your eye. She smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. I'll think about it. Think slowly, he said gently. Good things don't need rushing. Days turned into weeks. They met again, for coffee, for long walks, for conversations that made her laugh in ways she hadn't in years. Michael never asked to fix her. He just listened, quietly building a space where she could exist without apology. One afternoon, as they stood on the Brooklyn Bridge watching the sun melt into the skyline, he took her hand carefully, like it was something sacred. You don't have to say anything, he said. I just wanted you to know that I see you, not your story, not your pain, you. Emily's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, love didn't feel like danger. It felt like home. And as the city lights shimmered on the water below, Emily Carter realized that life had given her what Marcus never could. Not wealth, not power, but a love built on respect, honesty, and the quiet strength of a woman who had finally learned how to begin again. So, that's how our story ends. Quietly, but powerfully. You're still here, right? If you've stayed with me until this moment, maybe something in Emily's journey touched your heart in a way you didn't expect. Her story isn't just about revenge or pain. It's about healing, dignity, and choosing peace when the world tries to break you. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's what Emily did. She stopped fighting for control and started building her own peace. Maybe you've been through something too. Betrayal, loss, heartbreak. Remember, healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to walk again with grace. Like the Stoics taught, we can't always choose what happens, but we can always choose who we become after it. If this story made you feel something, even just a little spark of courage or hope, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength, and subscribe so we can keep walking these emotional journeys together. Because sometimes, stories heal us in ways medicine never can.